Hello, everybody. Thank you so much. Welcome to my success sessions. Oh, say that a bit quickly, it comes out wrong. Success sessions. Today I am on volume number 3, so episode 3, and I'm really excited because for the past 2 sessions I have done with people that I have worked with, and now I'm doing one with somebody who I know but haven't worked with. So it's really interesting because this is all complete new information for me. So I'm going to introduce Caroline, who is a Pilates instructor, amongst other things. I think I'm going to just, rather than sort of say what you do, I think it's better that you just let everybody know. But today's focus is something that is probably a subject that quite a lot of us need to maybe be a little bit more informed on. I kind of feel like it's a bit of a nervous, oh God, I know it's there, but I'm kind of ignoring it. So we're going to be talking pelvic floor and everything that goes with it. So Caroline, if you just would like to introduce yourself, let everybody know what it's about, and then we will go from there.
Okay, right. So I am a Pilates teacher. I've been teaching Pilates for about 14 years now. And more recently, I have moved more towards women's health and working with women. I realise most of my clients are women, and most of them are around a certain age. So I work more specifically on movement to help with conditions like pelvic floor dysfunction, not having the strength in a core. And those two things, core strength and pelvic floor strength, affect such a lot of stuff that happens in the body, that actually I find that if we focus on those things first, particularly when I first meet people, that can solve all sorts of other problems. So an ankle injury can be solved by a pelvic floor strengthening session. So we can really start at the core, start with the basics, and then spread out, and we do that all through movement.
That's really interesting, because from a nutritional health coaching point of view, I'm always like, start with the gut in terms of anything that is going wrong in terms of maybe skin or mental health and things like that. But I've never sort of gone into all the things that actually make the body function in terms of muscles. And so if someone came to you with an ankle injury, what do you like, how does that link to suddenly be like, right, let's look at the pelvic floor? Is it sort of, without being too kind of all the
without being too anatomical about it, it's an instability, or there's an imbalance somewhere in the body. So if you've got an injury in your ankle, chances are that's end of chain, so it's the end of a limb. So there's a really good chance that ankle is having to work really hard and really stabilize, because something at the center isn't doing what it should be doing. So we take everything back to the center, work on the stability of the pelvis, and that is linked to the core, and the pelvic floor is part of the core, part of your core group of muscles. And once you can work on stabilizing and strengthening those points, then the ankle doesn't have to work so hard. So generally speaking, the ankle can just rebalance and just start to work a bit more efficiently without having to be on high alert all the time. It can work a bit more efficiently, and all the effort is coming from the center, where all the strong muscles are and where your center of gravity already is. So you start from the center and work your way out. So I would never see someone with an ankle injury and just go all in on the ankle. I would take it back a few steps and start at the center and work on it out. Generally speaking, by the time we get to the ankle injury has gone.
It's gone.
Usually, yeah.
That's incredible. That is incredible. Talking about ankle injuries, I do have stuff that goes on in my, it's sort of ankle up to shin, and I'm always like, there's something that, and I've literally been to everything, but I've never ever considered doing Pilates.
Yeah. It's exactly, and it's the same with shoulders. So I see a lot of shoulder injuries, particularly in women. 40, 45 plus, it tends to creep in. And generally speaking, a shoulder injury is like, you imagine a coat hanger here. It's like you're being held up by coat hangers, and your shoulders become tense and tight, and eventually you get the pain. But usually that's the last thing that's happening. What's actually happening is that your abdominals aren't holding you up. So your coat hanger's having to hold you up. So everything's getting really tight here and overworking and is imbalanced. So the muscles aren't able to work efficiently. But it's all because they're not supported from the center. So again, with a shoulder injury, I wouldn't go all in on the shoulder. I would work on mobilizing and stretching and giving it a little break to try and switch it off and calm it down. Because until you do that, very often you can't feel what's going on in the core, because this is the overriding discomfort and pain. But if you can get that to just settle a little bit, then go into the core and start working on building the strength there, it rebalances. It just comes together, and that's what Pilates is brilliant for, because it's all done through movement. And 9 times out of 10, the people that are doing it don't really know what they're doing or why they're doing it. It's just a process that we follow. It's baby steps, and if you follow the process, it works. It really does.
Yeah.
It's really happy movement.
What got you into it in the first place? Because I, rightly or wrongly, and I sort of feel bad even saying this, I always kind of thought Pilates was for like the older lady. That's maybe because my mum did it.
Yeah.
But I don't think it is at all. And you know, I'm re-educating myself on that. But what was the sort of driving force for you to go in? And I feel like you pivoted as well, from maybe how you started 13 years ago to where you are now. Can you just tell me a little bit about that?
So I started Pilates when I was 24. I was living in London and I was running, and I got a knee injury. So it started for me with knees, and I just had this recurring knee injury that I just couldn't get rid of. And no matter how much stretching I did, and that's always the answer, isn't it? People say, "Oh, you don't stretch enough. You haven't stretched enough. That's why you're injured." And no matter how much stretching I did, I couldn't get it to go. So I started doing Pilates, and I did about 12 months of it, and realized that the injury had gone. Actually, by that point, it wasn't really a focal point for me, because I was actually enjoying Pilates. So I'd kind of forgotten about the running injury, but it just disappeared, and it's never come back. And it was recurring. It had been recurring for 3 or 4 years. It's never come back since. So that's where I started, and just kind of learnt the value of it. And then I trained to teach it because I loved it.
Yeah.
And purely because I just wanted to get better at it. And there's some really fun things you can do in Pilates once you get onto the equipment. It can be quite acrobatic almost.
I've seen those equipment, my goodness.
Yeah, exactly. There's a lot of upside down and hanging from beams and bars.
Yeah.
And I just wanted to try all that. That was really appealing to me. And so that's how I started learning to teach it, was just to get a bit better at it.
Yeah.
And I just loved it. And I love teaching it. And I love working with people. And I think the pivot has come probably more recently, maybe in the last 3 or 4 years, where I realized that the people that seem to come to me seem to be similar kind of group. It tends to be women 35 to about 60, some older, some younger, but that's the general core group. And they usually have had children, past children, and very often a few years past. So you say that it's for older ladies, and that often is the case, because I think women I say older ladies, this is awful because I'm 40, but you know, you get to kind of 40 plus, you're past having your children, you're approaching menopause, or it's on the horizon. And I think these things start to change, body starts to change, you know, your jaw drops, your boobs drops, your pelvic floor drops. It all has gravity, an effect on gravity. So even if you haven't had children, it's not specific to women that have had kids having a dysfunctioning pelvic floor. And that seems to be why people start to come. And very often they've got an injury, they come to me for another injury, and then they realize that Pilates helps these other things as well. So it helps with the pelvic floor and the core strength. But they don't, like I say, it's not usually something that's conscious. It's not like I sit and say, right, today we're doing a class on pelvic floor. We very rarely do that, but we incorporate it into movement. So they just start to unconsciously know how to build in a bit of pelvic floor engagement. Just moving muscles surrounding pelvic floor creates blood flow. You know, just doing the right moves in the right way, in the right order, and correcting and making sure that the right muscles are working when we need them, and the wrong ones are out of the equation and getting a rest when they need the rest.
Yeah.
Just teaching the body to work a bit more dynamically, but with a bit of sense.
So, okay, while you're talking, I'm doing my pelvic floors.
Okay, yeah. I bet a lot of people are.
But can you just, like, you know, on the sort of the side of not taking it seriously, which I think some people might do, you know, like, how many times have I chatted with my friends and gone, oh my God, I literally can't jump on a trampoline, or I'm going to wee myself, or I do wee myself, or laugh, or sneeze, or cough. Yeah. But what is the kind of, I've just always thought, oh, I've had kids, that's where it is. But what's the sort of science behind it?
Yeah, so that is often why the having children is the catalyst. Very often, not always the case though. So there is a gravity effect. There is hormonal effects that affect the function of the pelvic floor. it's one of those things. I was having a conversation with someone yesterday, and she said, I think I've done quite well. I've had 2 big babies, and I can do pretty much everything I want. I probably couldn't do a star jump on a trampoline without weeing myself, but other than that, everything's good. And I said, yeah, well, that is good, but really, we want you to be able to do a star jump on a trampoline, because that's real life. Real life is unpredictable. Yeah. We don't necessarily know when we're going to cough or laugh or sneeze or need to jump or need to move in a quick movement, and so we need to have a pelvic floor that is functioning and responsive.
Yeah.
And I think a lot of people have small issues, like they might have coughed and a little bit of wee came out, or laughed with their friends, and then those small issues can just stay as small issues, or they can develop. And certainly when you come to menopause and you add in changes of hormones, they can really develop. So the change in estrogen levels has a direct effect on the functioning of muscles.
Right.
So your pelvic floor can be badly affected then. So getting on top of these small issues before they become big issues is really important. And I think that's where people don't quite realise the importance until it is too late. And I say too late, it's never too late. So there's been some studies recently on the elderly population in care homes. And by the way, I think it is the most common reason for women to be admitted to a care home in later life is incontinence. It is the reason that people can't care for themselves anymore. But, which is terrifying, but the upside is that when the studies have been done on ladies in care homes, and they've been taught how to activate their pelvic floor efficiently, they can reverse it, even at that age, even at that late point in life, the effects of
Okay, great. That's good to hear that you can start at any point.
You can start at any point, and usually there's a reverse. Sometimes, things like prolapse happen. Sometimes there's surgical fixes as well. Yeah. But usually that's the kind of worst case scenario. That's quite rare, really. Yeah. A lot of it can be reversed with the right exercises at the right times.
Okay, so for somebody who's sitting watching and doing their, might be doing what I'm doing, which is like, oh my God, I'm doing my pelvic floor now. What sort of tips do you have, other than I obviously, doing classes with you and getting actually fully involved would be recommended, and 100% I want you to talk about your what you do and where people can find you. But if someone is just sitting there going, God, I have never even thought about it, do you have any tips that are just like, okay, do this?
Yeah, there are some basic things. So there's a few different types of, particularly if we're talking about incontinence, there's a few different types. There's urgency, frequency, where you need to go to the toilet all the time, and you go for that last wee before you go out on a car journey, because you just know that given an hour, you're going to need to go again. And then there's urgency when you get to the front door, you put your key in, and suddenly you need the loo, and you have to race through the house to get to the loo. So there's a few different types of incontinence. And then there's stress incontinence, when you laugh or shout. And there are some different tips depending on what your issue particularly is. Generally speaking, if someone was to say, I've got a shoulder injury, I wouldn't say, okay, to get rid of your shoulder injury, you need to grip it and release it, and grip it and release it. Because actually that's kind of, yes, there might be a bit of that, and so the pelvic floor exercises that we all know is Kegels, the kind of lift and release. Yes, there's a bit of that, but that's not the whole picture. If you were to go down that road and just do your Kegel exercise, it's a really good place to start. But you need to vary where you're doing it, what position you're doing it in. You need to make sure that you are accessing the whole pelvic floor. So that is the back and the front. So there's 3 holes that go through in females, 3 holes that go through the pelvic floor. You need to lift through all of them. So it's making sure that you access it in the correct way at the correct times, and varying your positions, making sure you do it at different times of day and in different positions. So hands and knees, standing, when you're walking, when you're in bed. In bed is a really good place to start, actually. Okay. But a really good place to begin, if you don't know what a pelvic floor exercise is or how to get to it at all, is just to sit in a chair, in an office chair, lean back so that the back of your pelvis, so you're kind of almost tucking, almost slouching. Yeah. So you're sitting on the back of your pelvis.
Yes.
And then you would imagine that you're trying to stop yourself passing wind. That's the way to start.
Okay.
Don't grip so that you lift up, so that your bum pushes you up.
I've just been doing that.
Yeah, you don't want to rise and fall.
Okay.
Keep it at a low level. And actually with pelvic floor, gentle, small is what you're looking for. You're not looking for big, strenuous.
Okay, fine.
So gentle is to start. So lifting up through the back passage, and then allow that feeling to travel through to the front. So as though you were trying to stop yourself having a wee.
Yeah.
Don't ever do that when you're having a wee, because you'll get a UTI. But just to practice, leaning back is a good place to start, because people can generally feel it a little bit more in the back than they can in the front.
Yeah.
So then you can take that and use it in different positions. Lying in bed is a good one. Lying on your side is a good one. And then there are some other things you can do, like if you wanted to build up. So for example, often the bladder is the problem, and the bladder becomes weaker as we get older. So if you wanted to build up the strength of your bladder and the receptors between your bladder and your brain, there are things you can do, like gripping your toes. So if you get to the front door, you put your key in the door and you suddenly need the loo, stand still and just grip your toes and just take a couple of seconds. And it's a distraction technique, because actually you don't need the loo any more than you did 5 steps ago. But suddenly, knowing you're near, it brings on that feeling of urgency. And the same with frequency. You know, if you're someone that needs to go to the loo every hour, no matter where you are, and you panic if you get somewhere and there is no loo, you need to start building up the strength and stamina of your bladder. So you need to make sure that your bladder is fully emptied every time you go to the loo. So that means being able to relax and release the pelvic floor and let everything come out. So you empty fully. And then you need to start building up the stamina. So you need to hold it a little bit. Don't always go to the loo immediately when you feel that first urge. You've just got to start to build up the stamina. And that will help if you're someone that's getting up in the night 3 or 4 times a night. And that's not necessarily someone in your 80s. That can be easily someone in their 30s.
That's really interesting.
Building up that stamina will help you sleep as well.
You see, what I find super interesting from a nutritional point of view is anxiety of this happening, of you having anxiety because of the fact that you are going through this.
Yeah.
When you're anxious, your gut sends, you feel it in your gut, because your brain sends a signal to your gut through your cranial nerve that is like, oh, I'm not happy, and then your gut responds with that kind of butterfly feelings. But for some, it can actually cause you to want to go to the loo.
Yeah.
So it's like you're on this loop of, I'm anxious because I'm worried about the fact that I might wee myself, or I didn't realize, is the pelvic floor also the back one?
Yeah, absolutely. It's a that go around, that sort of figure of 8 that goes around. Yeah,
so you've got that anxiety that's there. That in turn, your brain is then sending a signal to your gut going, don't feel great, need to go to the loo.
Yeah. And then it can go even further than that. So your breath and your lungs really affect how easily you can activate your pelvic floor. So your breathing's like a piston effect. So as you breathe in, your diaphragm lowers, and you can slightly let go, your pelvic floor slightly drops. And as you breathe out, your diaphragm lifts, and that piston effect pulls your pelvic floor up. So if you're breathing fully and deeply and you're using the breath effectively, your pelvic floor is able to function really well, really.
Wow.
But if you're not, so if you're anxious and you're like this, or you're injured and you're like this, or your posture's just really bad and you're sitting at a desk all day long and you're like this, that's going to directly affect how well your pelvic floor can function. It just physically can't do the job that it needs to do because it's not able to have that lift.
Yes.
So there's a lot of other factors, which is why going from a movement perspective and working from a Pilates or any movement perspective, squats are really good. Getting the muscles to the pelvic floor to function with movement is key, because we don't sit around static all day, most of us. But also just having the ability to understand the postural effect of a bad posture or an injury on the pelvic floor, and how these things, actually it's chicken and egg, what came first, but you've got to fix one first. So working on the whole body and not zoning in on, right, we've just got to do 10 squeezes a day and that's it. It's not really enough.
I love the fact that breath work also helps, because breath work also helps with calming down your nervous system. So if you're if you're anxious and you suffer from anxiety and you've gone into fight or flight, breathing helps to relax that. So it's like breathing can help with that, as well as your pelvic floor.
Yeah, if you can breathe deeply and breathe into the back of the lungs, get the lungs to
so
work.
Many people don't breathe properly, which sounds ridiculous, but they actually don't. They're shallow breaths, and they are.
And it's the biggest question I get in Pilates. The biggest cause of confusion is the breath. Because for me, what is quite natural and to move with a breath is quite normal. When you start Pilates, it's always a thing, don't get the breath. I'm holding my breath. I can't get the two to work together. And it just is practice. It's just learning the choreography, allowing your body to move and be free, and then add in the breath. And then once you've got the freedom in the body, the breath comes much more easily anyway. If you're tight and nervous and scared and a little bit intimidated, you're not going to breathe properly.
Not at all.
You're going to be panting, and it's an instinct.
It is.
So the breath has a lot to answer.
The breath is incredible. I suffered quite a bad trauma when I was in my early 20s, and I went and became a scuba dive instructor. And I had no idea at the time that spending 4 years underwater really, really, really helped me, because I was constantly belly breathing. And so I was just really healing my nervous system through deep breaths, which just coincided that I was underwater with it. So it's like, I love everything to do with breath. I think it's incredible.
Isn't that smart though? I wonder what took you to,
I know, don't know, instinct.
Smart move. Yeah. And it's kind of a classic move, isn't it? Let's go to Australia and live in, outdoors and be with the element.
Sort of divine intervention, I always think. That's
a bit of an instinctive action.
Completely. The universe just swooped in and said, right, go and be a dive instructor. So something that we've talked on previously is that normalising the fact that women go through this has its pros and cons. Because I think we mentioned just offline was that you can, and I see adverts all the time for tenor, pants, sleep, all of the things that are there to help the lady who might be in this situation. But what's your views on that? Because I found that quite interesting. That it's like
interesting one. A bit. I have a few different opinions on it. I feel like it's become. They've named it as normal from a commercial perspective. So they're trying to normalize it so that you will buy the product that helps you with it. So the tenor lady, and I'm sure there's other brands available, but they've normalized it, and they've put adverts on TV of young women saying, a little bit of we and I'm still me, and make it normal, and it's okay to wear the pad. That's it. It's not okay. I mean, it is if you need it, and of course it's a short-term assist, but it's not the fix, and it's not normal, and it's not something you should accept for yourself. We all have that right to have a functioning body and to be free in, to use our bodies however we want. And I think the problem with tenor lady is it gives you a crutch to lean on and something to rely on, which we don't really need. The other thing about it is that they've very cleverly positioned the products in the aisles next to the sanitary wear. Just we get to a point in history where we are really open about our menstrual cycles, and people are happy to go out and shop for the correct products for themselves. And then they put tenor lady next to it, so it makes you go, oh, okay, well that's a sanitary product. Okay, we can all wear those, that. And it's not the same, but they're making it feel like the same. So I do feel like there's a really, as much as if you need it and it helps you, and that's your fix, and that works for you, and that works for your confidence, and you can happily continue your life in that way, go for it. But you've got to be able to feel confident, and I personally don't feel like those products help with that. And I think getting to understand your body, and don't get me wrong, it's more of an investment, it's much more of a time investment to get to grips with your body and find the right fix. And that's not necessarily Pilates, but it's finding a way of understanding how this all works and how to fix it. It's a much bigger time investment, but I feel like it's long term, it's a better solution.
Absolutely. It's the same with nutrition. It takes hard work to swap and change habits, that old habits from, with new habits.
Yeah.
But what would you rather? Get to a age and be put into a care home because you're incontinent, or look at it now and be like, right, I can do something about this now. The effort that I do now is short term for a way longer gain.
Yeah, and I think that's the thing. I don't think we as a nation, a group of people, humans, I don't think we look that far ahead always. We're not particularly good at, how many of us have a bank account for when we're going to need to go in a care home? None of, people don't look at, and yet we're an aging population, so we need to be considering these things. And I think when you hear that it's the biggest reason for people having to go into a care home because they can't look after themselves, then it does make you realize, and that's not something that has to happen to everybody. To a certain extent, that's a choice. And looking after your body and making sure that you're strong and that your body is able to function as best as it can.
Yes.
And if you do that and you still need to wear a tenner lady on a long journey, then God, do it. That's going to give you peace of mind. That means you can travel. That's great. But don't wear one so that you can just go to the Tesco's and live your life as normal. You want it for emergency only, or backup maybe, but not.
Okay, so where someone's watching, what would, if they thought, right, Caroline, I want your help, where's the best place to find you? What can you, do you do? I know that you're based near me in Surrey, but do you do?
I'm based in Surrey. So at the moment, of course, everything's online. So I am, my website is studioscoop, all one word, .co.uk. And on there, I've got access to all of the classes that I do in a week. You can book in online. I'm also pulling together some courses at the moment, some restorative core courses. So they will be available in the coming months. I'm doing a core challenge that's actually starting this weekend, but it will be run again in a few weeks' time. So they're always running, and they're really good for just a 3-week access to abdominals, core work, breath work, pelvic floor and diastasis recti. So they kind of cover those things, and it's all done in your own time with a little bit of help from me in live sessions as well.
Nice.
So yeah, there's a few different ways, and there's lots of stuff coming, but Instagram and Facebook are also good ways, and you can click through my website to get to those.
Perfect. Thank you. I feel like I'm more educated on it. I do feel like it's something that can't be ignored.
No,
and it's not happening to you now. It's almost like with anything to do with any muscles. It's like if you can work out a muscle now before it's too late.
Exactly. And the thing I think is with Pilates, even if pelvic floor isn't your issue, or even if it's an issue that it's not really something that's big time for you, you can ignore it for a bit, and that's absolutely fine. Lots of people do. But Pilates is a good place to start, because on top of all of that stuff, you just get a really good workout. I mean, certainly in my classes, we move, we flex, we extend. So we really, we work on posture, and then you may find that you never have to think about pelvic floor, because you just inadvertently do it. So finding a good Pilates teacher locally is, I would say, everybody should be doing that. Yeah, it's basic level 1. Everyone should have a Pilates teacher in their back pocket.
Pilates teacher close by. Amazing. Thank you so much.
Pleasure. My pleasure.
And once this is uploaded, I will obviously tag you so people can get in touch with you that way.
Brilliant. Great. Lovely. Oh, thank you. Nice to see you.
Bye.
See you soon.